Hey, welcome to My Week After the show. We decided to take our headlines online tonight because there's so much stuff to talk about. I mean, you could talk about Hillary Clinton giving her first big interview. Donald Trump has gone off the rails, which is really no surprise. Bill Cosby isn't the guy who everyone thought he was, though I don't think anyone thought he was that guy for a while now. So there's just a lot. There's no shortage of things to talk about in the news. Did you guys see Hillary Clinton's first network sit-down interview since she was a candidate so she can clear up all of the misconceptions about her?
She did a hell of a job.
Did she clear up any misconceptions for you?
No. I mean, well, you know, I mean, I thought this was an odd decision. I mean, I think if you're Hillary Clinton, some of what you want to do for the next 4 or 5 months is just, you know, sit back and let the process take shape. There's not a real credible threat to her in the primaries, although Bernie Sanders does appear to be getting traction. There's no way he's going to get the nomination. And so I think there was some, you know, sort of internal fear-mongering in that campaign that led to, we've got to get out there and tell our story so that he doesn't catch us. I think it was an overreaction.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of...
She didn't say anything in that interview that that I felt like helped her out a whole lot.
No, that's what I was slightly baffled by it, because if this was the interview to kind of come out and set the record straight on a couple of things, but they talked a lot about the whole trustworthiness and that people aren't really trusting Hillary, and she's like, people trust me, but it seemed kind of like her response was a little stilted and a little off.
People don't trust the Clintons. They don't necessarily like the Clintons, but they vote for them over and over and over because of their performance, and that's what she's got to. That's what she's got to pivot toward.
They did 20 years ago. This is a different age with the internet and what have you, and their lack of honesty, let's say, is much more apparent, much more widely known today, and it's much more of an issue. Hillary Clinton would do well with a stronger primary opponent than Bernie Sanders, because there's a lot of issues building in this campaign that if she were in a competitive primary, she would have to deal with and get out of the way, that are going to hit her right in the face come the general campaign. And this whole idea of keeping the press behind a rope and sort of keeping herself distant.
That optic was amusing to see that.
You're not going to get away with that in a general campaign, and you're going to have whoever she runs against on the Republican side will have been vetted and battle tested. I think, you know, she would do well if a Joe Biden decided, hey, I might try this.
Yeah, you know what? But I'm sorry, the Republicans have got to get their act together. They are letting Trump overshadow everything that's going on. I mean, it's the fact that
you want to let that play out the way it's playing out. You want to let Donald Trump and Crazy Ben Carson force people like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio to have to come out and respond to these absurdities.
Donald Trump's a sideshow, and he's not.
He's a sideshow
He's not a sideshow.
He's got a lot of life in him, though.
He's the third highest poll numbers.
He's the equivalent of Jesse Jackson was when he was in a Democratic.
Well, I don't totally believe those numbers. I think that's just a total flash in the pan spike. But the fact that he keeps driving the headlines and Republicans have to respond to him, and they're like, hey, why don't you tone it down,
between
Donald?
Trump and Cruz and Carson to some degree,
will all be gone by.
I'm not sure of that.
spring.
I'm not sure of that. They may be gone by spring. They will not be gone by the winter when you start to see these primaries and caucuses.
They're not going to. They're not. They're certainly. I mean, everybody every year, every
all
cycle,
fall.
we go through the same thing. Oh, the Republicans going to nominate somebody out of the mainstream.
I don't think they will.
No.
Every day, every year they don't. Of course, they don't win. Maybe they ought to.
And they're not going to nominate him, but he's taking attention. He's taking attention away. It's not good.
He's shaping the race in a way that if you're Jeb Bush, you are not real happy.
But a lot of it goes to how the media shapes these campaigns. For God's sakes, Bernie Sanders is also kind of a wacky guy in terms of his positions and policies, and he's being treated like a serious candidate. There's nothing serious about Bernie Sanders. He's a flat-out socialist, and they're and all of a sudden the press is treating him like, well, there's a serious challenge to Hillary
for starters,
Clinton.
He's an office holder. He's an important vote in the Congress. Ted Cruz is not an important vote in the Congress. Has done nothing to distinguish himself.
He's got the same vote in the Senate that Bernie Sanders does.
But he's a first-term senator who has not distinguished himself in any way other than by saying outrageous things.
I certainly agree. But if you look at the things Bernie Sanders says, they're outrageous as well.
I'm not sure people react with the fear to the things that Bernie Sanders says that they do to Donald Trump, for instance.
He doesn't get the same treatment that somebody like Cruz gets when he says. I mean, he says something and the press all over it. Bernie Sanders says something about, well, you know, let's come in and
Very different, though,
and take all your money,
about-
and nobody jumps up.
Very
and down.
different, though, talking about policy issues and making racist comments about immigrants. You know, those are not
that's
equivalent
Donald
issues.
Trump.
And
And
Donald Trump
Donald
has
Trump-
the third highest poll numbers in
And
the Republican
this time
field.
next month, Donald Trump will be nowhere.
Yeah.
He'll be in the
All right.
debates.
All right, so that was my headline. Gosh, I'm so glad that we got some good traction out of that. Nolan, what did you see?
Well, we had Judge Lisa Gorska, out in Oakland County, lock up 3 children this week because they wouldn't have
This
lunch
is
with their
disturbing
dad.
to me.
And it ought to be disturbing because you got 3 kids who are obviously caught in the middle of a horrible domestic situation, a horrible divorce. What the judge should have done, I mean, and they're little kids now, sit out of their home, sitting in a juvenile center. At the very least, they should have given them to a relative or whatever. But what she should have done is take this mother and father and put them in side-by-side cells in the Oakland County Jail and say, you can come out when you work out an agreement that is in the best interest of your children. And you can just see here that these kids are being used as pawns in a nasty adult fight.
How do you even, I mean,
I don't know.
tackle that? Up to a judge's discretion,
I'm really,
right?
really puzzled about why any judge would behave that way in this situation and as Nolan says, deal with the kids rather than the adults who are the responsible.
Right.
Kids may have been
parties.
absolute brats and sort of pissed her
But
off.
they're
or
Yeah, but they're
kids.
kids. They're kids. They're under the age of 16.
And they're caught in a situation.
And then the dad,
that's
after they go
difficult.
to jail, the dad gets on a plane and goes to Israel. When the heck was he going to have lunch with them? You know? So how long is she going to keep him in? Who knows? But that was probably as dumb a decision
Yeah, it wasn't
as
the
we've
way
seen
to
come
handle.
out of the
Wasn't the way to
court for a long
handle
time.
that, and it's got her in the news for things that you don't want to be in the news.
That's
for.
right.
All right, Stephen?
My headline is about the Confederate flag and the Orville Hubbard statue in Dearborn. We had a really interesting letter in the Free Press last week about the Orville Hubbard statue and whether that is analogous to the Confederate flag. And we've got a flood of letters responding to it, some people defending it, a lot of people saying, let's talk about this. I'm really interested in the way that these symbols have taken on sort of a serious or inspired pretty serious discussion about race that goes, I think, beyond the symbols themselves, and that's what you want to see it do. You don't want it to sort of
Well, I mean,
be limited to let's get rid of this thing. It's what does this thing represent, and what can we do about it?
So then why not the Jefferson Memorial?
I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I mean, obviously I would defend the Jefferson Memorial quite vehemently. Would I defend the Orville Hubbard statue? I'm not sure. I mean, I think I actually had a really interesting conversation with a history professor about this this week in my Sunday column. Will be about that conversation and the statue. She says she wouldn't necessarily get rid of monuments and things that sort of celebrate actual history. The question is, what context are they put in, and what else is around them, and who else is allowed to celebrate their history in those same spaces? Think about Dearborn. Think of how Dearborn has changed since Orville Hubbard was mayor. Is there any recognition of the population that exists there now in the same way that there is?
But there will be. I mean,
There might be.
I mean, history is
Always sort of being unwritten, right?
And so 20 years from now, I'm certain that there will be. But you have to take a look at people like Orville Hubbard or Thomas Jefferson or whomever and say, they were people of their times. Was that all Orville Hubbard was about? Was his segregation?
Of course not. Nobody is one.
And was that all Andrew Jackson about the Trail of Tears? We have people who have done great things in our communities and in our country who were flawed people.
Yeah.
And I think there has to be some recognition of that. But if you want to get into disturbing removals
Right.
over the past week, Dukes of Hazzard is no longer on the television
Because of the flag.
Because of General
General
Lee.
Lee has the Confederate flag on top of it. That is absurd.
Well, so what's funny about that is when that show was very popular when I was in elementary
Oh my
school.
gosh, we watched it all the time.
I was not allowed to watch the Dukes of Hazzard, not because there was a Confederate flag on the
Daisy
car,
Dukes.
but because of that, the woman was dressed so provocatively. That was what offended my mother. Was not the flag.
And
it was her outfit.
You had a smart mother.
Just like
You
you may
had a
not
very
watch
smart
that
mother,
show.
'cause I think the gals in my friend circle, Luke and Bo Duke were fine-looking gentlemen in the South.
I'm sitting here thinking, if there is no place in America for the Duke boys, I'm not entirely sure I feel welcome anymore.
They shouldn't have had that flag on their car. Not sure what that was about.
And I think I'm going to have to end it there. Hey, thanks for watching After the Show. We'll see you next time.